You act like you're the only woman who's lost a baby. Those were the words. Cold, measured, heartless. They cut through me harder than the cramping had, sharper than the silence in that hospital room. I had just lost our child, our baby. And that's what my husband said. Not a whisper of comfort. No gentle hands. Just that, like my grief was too loud, too inconvenient, too much for him to bear. I lay there in that paper-thin hospital gown, blood still drying on my thighs, heartbeat trying to slow from the devastation, and I realized I was alone. Not physically. He was in the room. But emotionally, spiritually, I had never felt so abandoned in my life. My name is Camille. And in one night I lost more than a child. I lost my entire world. The doctor called it a spontaneous miscarriage. It happens, she said gently, as if those words could soften the blow of my baby's heartbeat stopping inside me. But it wasn't just something that happened. To me it was everything. I was 6 months along. I had just started to feel the tiny flutters that reminded me someone was growing inside me. We had picked out a name. Bought a crib. Painted the nursery in soft sage green. It was all becoming real. Until it wasn't. And the man who had placed his hand on my belly just a week before, whispering that he couldn't wait to meet our little miracle, suddenly couldn't even look me in the eye. After we left the hospital, he drove us home in silence. Not the heavy, grieving silence of shared pain, but the kind that felt like a wall between us. A wall he had been building long before I noticed it. When we walked into our apartment, I expected, hoped, for some kind of comfort. Maybe he'd hold me. Maybe he'd sit with me in the quiet. But instead he tossed his keys on the counter, looked at me with that empty expression and said, "Don't drag this out. It's not like you were the first woman to have a miscarriage." That's when it hit me, he wasn't grieving. He was relieved. I stopped eating. Not because I wanted to waste away, but because food had no taste. Days blurred into nights. I'd wake up crying in the dark, clutching my stomach like maybe, just maybe, if I held on tight enough I could feel my baby again. He didn't notice. Or if he did, he didn't care. He started coming home later. Started sleeping on the edge of the bed like I was contagious. And one night he didn't come home at all. I waited until sunrise, eyes burning, heart already knowing what my mind refused to accept. When he finally walked in, smelling like another woman's perfume, he didn't even bother to lie. "You're too much," he said. "Too emotional. I need air." As if grieving the death of our child was a character flaw. As if his betrayal was oxygen and I was suffocating him. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor, curled up beside the sink, shaking from the emptiness. I picked up a picture frame, our ultrasound, and stared at it until my tears blurred everything. I spoke to my baby in whispers. "I'm sorry. I wanted you so badly." The next morning I packed away the baby clothes. The tiny socks. The onesie that read "Mommy's Little Miracle." I folded them gently like I was tucking a part of myself into the box too. I sealed it and shoved it into the back of my closet. I couldn't bear to throw it away. A week later he told me he was going to stay with a friend for a while. That friend turned out to be Sabrina. A woman he'd been seeing for months. Someone he said understood him better. She was 6 weeks pregnant. And just like that he was gone. No goodbye. No remorse. No apology. Just silence. I was left behind. With a grave in my womb, a ring on my finger, and a heart torn to shreds. But what he didn't realize, what men like him never realize, is that women like me don't stay broken forever. Grief has a way of rearranging you, quietly, cruelly, and without asking for permission. After he left, I didn't even bother trying to put the pieces of my life back together. I didn't know where to start. The woman I used to be, the one who decorated nurseries, made silly baby Pinterest boards, and believed in the warmth of a partner's love, she felt like someone I used to know. Someone naive. Someone dead. In the weeks that followed, I barely spoke to anyone. I avoided calls from friends, ignored texts that asked how I was doing, and ghosted every attempt at comfort. People mean well, but sometimes their words hurt more than silence. It wasn't meant to be. God has a plan. You'll try again. As if my baby had been a disposable dream easily replaced. As if healing came in one-size-fits-all cliches. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just existed. The apartment felt haunted. Every room echoed with the life I'd imagined. A tiny laugh that would never fill the hallways. A nursery that sat untouched behind a closed door. And then there were the traces of him. His cologne still clung to the closet. His favorite coffee mug sat where he left it, still chipped on the rim. His hoodie, the one I used to steal when I was cold, hung on the back of the chair like it was waiting for him to come back. But he didn't. And I stopped waiting. Something changed inside me the day I saw his baby announcement online. I wasn't even searching for it. A friend sent me a screenshot by mistake. There they were, him and Sabrina, posing at a gender reveal party with big smiles and pink confetti raining down. It's a girl. The caption read, "Our rainbow after the storm." I wanted to scream. Not because they were having a baby but because of the lie. The audacity to call it a rainbow, when they danced through my storm and left me drowning. The baby I lost didn't matter. The years we spent didn't matter. I had been erased. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table staring at the ultrasound photo I'd taped to the back of my journal. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to waste another tear on someone who walked away like I was nothing. I would rise, not just for me but for the little life I never got to meet. For the woman I used to be. For the one I was becoming. But healing wasn't poetic. It was gritty. Lonely. Ugly even. I had to face things I didn't want to face. Therapy became a lifeline. My first session I sobbed for 45 straight minutes. The second I said nothing at all. But little by little I started piecing together the wreckage. I stopped blaming myself. I stopped romanticizing him. I picked up freelance writing work to make ends meet. At first, it was just articles and ghost-written blog posts for mommy websites and health platforms. But my voice, my truth, kept sneaking in. One day I wrote an anonymous essay titled "The Baby I Lost and the Husband Who Left with Her Memory." It went viral. I didn't expect that. Emails poured in. Women thanking me for putting into words what they hadn't been able to say. Women who had suffered in silence. Women who had lost children, marriages, pieces of themselves. And somehow survived. It lit something inside me. The pain I thought had ruined me had given me a voice others needed to hear. So I wrote more. Stories. Essays. Poetry. I poured it all out. Grief, rage, hope, love, loss. I turned my pain into pages. And by the end of the year I had a manuscript. I sent it to 5 publishers. 4 rejected me. 1 didn't. And that's how Empty Crib, Full Heart was born. It debuted at number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. Within weeks I was doing interviews, speaking on podcasts, invited to panels and grief summits. My face was on the cover of the book I wrote with shaking hands and tear-stained pages. And still, he didn't call. Not even when I appeared on national television. But I knew he saw it. He watched. He heard. He knew. That was enough. Because I wasn't doing any of this to prove him wrong anymore. I was doing it to remind myself I was right to begin with. Success looks different when it's born from pain. Some people rise because the world claps for them. I rose because I refused to let the silence kill me. After Empty Crib, Full Heart was released, something shifted in the universe. At least that's how it felt. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waking up with grief sitting on my chest like a weight I couldn't move. People started seeing me, not as the woman who got left, not as the girl who broke down, but as a voice. A warrior. A survivor. I didn't expect the book to do what it did. I thought maybe a few hundred people would read it. I thought maybe a few would cry, maybe some would email me, thank me, share their stories. But within weeks, it became a movement. Women were sending in letters from across the world. One woman said she hadn't spoken about her miscarriage in 20 years until she read my story. Another told me she read the book with her teenage daughter after losing her own mother, and they cried together for the first time in months. It wasn't just about my baby anymore. It was about all of us, the invisible ones, the broken ones, the women who smile through scars. Then came the invitations. Publishing houses wanted to meet. Agents were calling. A popular daytime show asked me to come on and speak about resilience in the face of betrayal. That morning I stood backstage in a deep emerald green dress, makeup soft but fierce, hair curled in waves. My palms were sweating. I was nervous. Not because of the cameras but because part of me still remembered who I had been just a year before. The host asked me what it felt like to turn my pain into power. I looked at her, the audience, and then into the camera, knowing full well he might be watching. It felt like dying at first, I said honestly. Like everything I believed about love, about family, about myself had been ripped away. But sometimes we have to lose everything we thought we needed to become who we were meant to be. They clapped. I held back tears. That clip went viral within a day. But with the fame came something I didn't expect. Him. He didn't reach out directly. Of course not. Cowards rarely do. Instead, I saw his name pop up in my DMs from a burner account. Then he emailed me from his company address. The subject line read, "You look amazing. Can we talk?" I didn't open it. I didn't need to. There wasn't anything left to say. I had already said everything I needed in the dedication of my second book. To the woman I used to be, thank you for not letting him break you. And to the man who tried, thank you for giving me the fire to rise. Because I did rise. My publisher signed me for a 2-book deal. I launched a grief and healing podcast called Rewritten, where women came to share the chapters of their lives they never thought they'd get to tell. I started hosting writing workshops for survivors of loss. Women like me who carried stories like burdens they never got to unload. And I finally moved out of that apartment. The one that held too many ghosts. I bought a small townhouse near the water. Quiet. Clean. Full of light. A place I chose for myself, not for someone else's comfort or convenience. One afternoon I was signing books at a local event when someone tapped my shoulder. "Excuse me, are you Grace Walker?" I turned around and saw a woman in her 60s, holding a copy of Empty Crib, full heart with both hands like it was precious. "I just wanted to say thank you," she whispered. "I lost my daughter 30 years ago. I never talked about it. Not really. Your words made me feel like I wasn't alone." I hugged her. No cameras. No applause. Just 2 women bound by invisible wounds. That's when I knew my story had outgrown him. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about redemption. It was about reclaiming what I thought I lost. The pieces of me that shattered the night he walked away. He once told me I was too emotional, that my sadness made him feel trapped. But my emotions became my purpose. My sadness became someone else's survival. And as for him, I heard through a mutual friend that things didn't work out with Sabrina. She left him, apparently for someone more ambitious. He tried to come back. Tried to reconnect with old friends. Tried to step into spaces where people used to respect him. But the world had changed. I had changed. One day, I received a package at my publisher's office. No note. Just a copy of Empty Crib, Full Heart, marked up with highlighter and sticky notes. One section was circled multiple times. Read. The moment I stopped seeking closure from the person who hurt me, I became free. I smiled. It wasn't closure. It was confirmation. That I was never the weak one. I was just the one who stayed kind in a cruel storm. Now I was standing in the sun. It's strange how life loops back around, how the very people who discarded you are often forced to witness your glow up from the shadows they once left you in. I wasn't searching for a reunion. But life has a funny way of delivering closure. Unannounced, unexpected, and usually when you've already healed. It was a book festival in Portland, my 3rd city on a 5-state author tour. I had just finished a panel discussion titled Writing Through the Wreckage and was heading to the signing booth when I saw him. Daniel. The man who told me I was too broken to love. The man who left me days after my miscarriage. The man who moved on while I was still bleeding, inside and out. He stood a few feet away, dressed in a navy button-down that looked too crisp, like he was trying too hard. His eyes searched mine, and for a moment, I saw the flicker of recognition turn into guilt. But I didn't flinch. I didn't falter. I smiled because I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that's how I knew I was truly free. He approached slowly, like someone walking toward their own reckoning. "Grace," he said cautiously. I nodded. "Daniel. You look amazing." "I know," I replied. He let out a soft, awkward laugh. "I read your book." "Which one?" "All of them." He paused, then added, "You really did it. You turned everything around." I tilted my head slightly. No, I didn't turn it around. I became someone else entirely. Someone stronger. Someone better. He stuffed his hands into his pockets. I didn't know how to handle it, you know? Everything that happened. The miscarriage. Your sadness. I felt like I was drowning. And instead of swimming with me, I said softly, you climbed out of the water and left me behind. His eyes dropped. The silence stretched. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. But I wasn't about to make him feel better either. What do you want, Daniel? He looked up. I don't know. Maybe to apologize. Maybe to say I regret it. Regret. I repeated. That's heavy. What exactly do you regret? Leaving? Lying? Moving on before the blood had dried. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. He nodded, the weight of my words folding his shoulders. I'm happy for you, he finally said. I know, I replied again, then turned to leave. There was nothing left to prove. Nothing left to fix. I had healed without him. I had rebuilt myself with the pieces he left behind. And I had learned that the best revenge isn't loud or cruel. It's success. It's peace. It's showing up as your best self when they expected you to be shattered forever. That night, I stood in front of a packed room, reading a new chapter from my upcoming memoir titled Soft Doesn't Mean Weak. My voice didn't shake. Not even once. Afterward, a young woman came up to me, clutching a journal. Your words saved me, she whispered. And in that moment I realized, this was why it all happened. Not to break me, but to make me into a beacon for women who had lost their voice. Their baby. Their self-worth. Their will to fight. I had become the woman I once needed. And no man, no heartbreak, could ever take that away again. There comes a point in healing where the pain no longer roars. It hums. Still there, part of your rhythm, part of your story, but it no longer controls the beat. That's where I found myself, standing in a place I never imagined, not because I was fearless, but because I had walked through every storm and decided I wouldn't let them break me. The day I moved into my own place, I remember staring at the front door for a long time before I opened it. The keys trembled slightly in my hand, not from fear but from the weight of it all. Freedom finally mine. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't even in the best neighborhood. But it was mine. Every wall, every chair, every flower I placed on the windowsill was a declaration of survival. I filled the space with softness. Warm lighting, honey-colored curtains, books with cracked spines, plants that I watered religiously. It became a sanctuary. A safe place where I could breathe without the constant sound of someone else's disappointment echoing in my head. My second book had just come out. It wasn't supposed to be anything big. Just a continuation of my story, a collection of essays on healing, resilience, and the quiet strength of women. But it exploded. I was flooded with messages. Women telling me their stories, their heartbreaks, how they too were discarded like they were nothing after giving everything. One message stood out. You said everything I've never been brave enough to say out loud. That's when I knew. I hadn't just healed for myself. I had healed for all of us. It wasn't long before invitations came. Speaking gigs. Panels. Book signings. I went from being the woman crying into a pillow at 2 a.m. to the woman people stood in line to hear speak. It was surreal. And yet none of it felt like revenge. It felt like redemption. Until one day I got the email. A National Women's Leadership Summit was being held in partnership with several high-profile sponsors. One of them? Prestige Advertising Group. Daniel's company. I hadn't heard his name in almost a year. I didn't even know if he still worked there, but I didn't care. When they asked me to be the keynote speaker, I didn't hesitate. I walked into that ballroom wearing power, figuratively and literally. My tailored navy suit fit like armor. My heels clicked like a war drum against the marble floor. My name was everywhere. On the screens, the banners, the brochure. I wasn't anyone's wife. I wasn't someone's afterthought. I was the headliner. The topic of my talk? Turning pain into power. As I stood behind the podium looking out at a sea of eyes, some filled with admiration, some curiosity, I remembered the woman I used to be. The one who whispered apologies for taking up space. The one who tried so hard to be lovable she forgot how to love herself. But that woman was gone. I spoke without notes. Just heart. I told them about the miscarriage. The betrayal. The silent suffering behind closed doors. I told them how I rebuilt from the ground up, piece by agonizing piece. Not for revenge but because I deserved more. As we all do. I didn't mention Daniel. I didn't have to. The power of my story wasn't in naming my pain. It was in owning it. When the applause erupted, I didn't smile to gloat. I smiled because I had finally stepped fully into myself. Because the story that once threatened to drown me had become the bridge to something better. And just when I thought the chapter had closed, life wrote one more twist. Later that evening, I was standing near the refreshment table, sipping sparkling water, when a voice behind me said, "Grace." I turned. And there he was. Daniel. Older. A little grayer around the edges. Same suit style, same cologne. But the arrogance? Diminished. It was in his posture, in the slight hesitation before he spoke again. "I saw your talk," he said quietly. You were amazing." I nodded. "Thank you." There was a long pause. He looked like he wanted to say something else. Maybe an apology, maybe an excuse. But I wasn't interested in either. And I think he knew that. Eventually, he nodded and walked away. That was the last time I saw him. A few months later, I met Elijah at a literary fundraiser. He was different. Gentle, grounded, not intimidated by my success but drawn to it. He didn't try to fix me. He simply walked beside me. He listened more than he spoke. He remembered the small things. He made love feel like safety. We took it slow. No fireworks, no grand declarations, just a steady build. He showed up for me in ways I didn't know I needed. And when he asked me to marry him under the soft glow of string lights in our backyard, I said yes without fear. We got married in a botanical garden with only 20 people present. No drama. No ghosts from the past. Just laughter, joy, and peace. Daniel didn't get an invitation. But he saw the wedding photos online. And that was enough. My revenge wasn't dramatic. It didn't come in the form of angry confrontations or scathing emails. It came in the form of peace, of joy, of success. It came in the form of choosing myself, again and again, until it no longer felt like a fight. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their worth. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We post powerful episodes like this every single day.